Hi everyone, welcome to another show, Good Day Chula Vista, and we are on episode 50?
Yes.
Yes, right? Yeah, 50, yay! So we're still here after 50 episodes, that's always good, right?
Yes, it is.
So today we have a very special guest, and he's going to talk to us about the benefits of having a payroll company do your payroll or having your employees on payroll. So please stay with us because I'm sure you're going to learn a lot. We're back. Hey, so thank you for joining us. And today we're here with Ricardo Villa, and he's gonna explain everything to us. Welcome to our show.
Thank you for having me.
Of course, we were so happy to have you because we have so many questions for you. And you know what? There's a lot of agents here at the office, and in many of the real estate offices that have their assistants and don't have them on payroll. And I want to ask him what happens, if we don't have our assistants on payroll, if we're just paying them cash, if we're giving them a 1099, are they really a 1099 employee? So all those questions we're going to have Ricardo answer. So please stay with us. Share this video. If you're self-employed, you don't need to be a realtor to benefit from this information. If you're self-employed and you have employees or assistants and you're paying them, you're going to learn a lot. So please stay with us. Share the video to your page. Don't forget to make a comment. And remember, at the end of the show, today we're giving out some journals. Okay, so these are the gratitude journals that I'm always talking about. So make sure that you make a comment, say hello, and your name will be entered into the drawing for the end of the show. Right? Mm-hmm. Claudia's going to put your name in there.
I'm going to put my own name in there.
Yeah, you can put yours. Claudia's going to put her name in today because she wants one of those journals. Okay, so Ricardo, welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here. And tell us a little bit about you.
I've actually done more than just payroll. I've been doing payroll directly for about 6 years. Mm-hmm. I started my own company a year ago, and it's been going very, very well. This is my second startup. The first one was a company from Mexico that expanded out here, changed the relationship and started my own. Before that, I used to work for the city of San Diego as an analyst.
Uh-huh.
After that, I got into hospitality. It was the most fun that I've ever had being able to run a hotel. All my experiences before that actually got me to transfer a hotel in downtown with 333 rooms.
Wow.
Then my next assignment was Mexico City. I got the Hilton, which is on Reforma,
wow.
Near the Zocalo.
That's a busy one, right?
That is an extremely busy one. It's actually in about, I think it was 1,000 or 5,000 square foot of banquet facility, which means you literally can have cars elevated up and put them into the showrooms and banquet facilities. So it was extremely an incredible adventure.
And that was in Mexico City?
That was in Mexico City. It was on next to the Parque Alameda.
Oh, wow, yeah, where all the action happens.
Oh, yeah, where all the protests and everything goes on.
Yes.
The next assignment after that was actually in Spain. My title in my company that I used to work for was the fix-it guy. When things weren't going well, my job was to go in there and
fix it.
So I would come in and take care of everything, whether it's revenue, service, whatever was not making the owners happy, and make the owners happy.
Wow, yeah, good customer service.
Customer service, always the most important thing, first and only.
That's a great background, especially now that you're doing this, you already have it. The customer's always right.
Customer's always right. Well, the nice thing about it is I do understand from the payroll perspective how an operation works, which is why I make the payroll be adaptable to the business. Mm-hmm. Because if you just give somebody, this is what you have to do and this is what you have to do.
With no options.
No options, then the business is the one that's actually working harder. Mm-hmm. When it should be your payroll services that works the hardest.
Right, yeah.
They're there to adapt to you, or should adapt to you, and be able to make your life easier.
Yeah, yeah. It's nice when it's painless and you don't have to worry. You just have to pay for it.
Just have to pay for it.
Everything else is done. Claudia, can we get a little bit more air here? Thank you. So, are you from here, from San Diego?
Originally from Northern California,
Uh-huh,
and then when I was a little kid, moved to San Diego near Chicano Park.
uh-huh.
Got married, near downtown San Diego. Wife was about a mile away. Long story, that'll be for another show, I guess. But and then the different jobs actually took me around the world, and been married coming November, 30 years.
30 years,
30
yay! Congrats, you don't hear that too often.
No,
You must be a good husband.
I
And
can,
have a good wife.
I have a good wife. And then,
Yes, credit to the wife.
credit to the wife. She'll tell you stories, but basically she's, I help her, she helps me.
Yeah.
We, like any other relationship, you have to work at it.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. It's a
So I have to say her
50-50.
name, Isabel. So
Isabel, hopefully you're watching us. I know why you guys are still married, because you were traveling all the time.
no, that's not the reason.
Just kidding.
No, I spoil her and she spoils me. You know,
Aw.
that's the bottom line.
Yes, that is good. We have our manager here. She's been married forever also. That's her first marriage, and I think it takes a special kind of person, or couple to stay together through, the good ones and the bad ones. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, congratulations on that.
Thank you.
So now let's get into the questions. So we're going to be talking about payroll, like I said, and what is California sick leave?
California sick leave is a mandatory law for employers of more than 25 employees that is required for them to receive sick leave. It's kind of it can be done two different ways, where you either give them, 3 days, 24 hours, or you give them the upfront, you give them that amount, or you accrue it. It becomes very, very complicated when you accrue, because it can accrue in the next year and the year after that, and then now all of a sudden you have a lot of hours that is owed to the employees to use. However, it's not something you pay out, so it's not a benefited like vacation or PTO, personal time off. So it is a complicated process. It's not like what we used to think is sick leave. Now, people always have one thing about it. If you have a business and you're a partner in another business, and you have 12 in one and 13 in the other, it could be that you have 25 employees, not because they're in separate federal tax IDs. That's where all the complication gets in with sick leave.
Yeah.
The problem with California sick leave is it's not just the state of California. There are about 19 cities, and San Diego is one of them, where their numbers are 5 for 40. So it becomes even more complex when a business is actually working, or they actually have an office inside city of San Diego as opposed to, let's say, Chula Vista. Some employees may get one amount, and another set of employees may get a different amount.
Okay. So then that's for companies or an individual or a corporation that has 25 employees or more.
Correct.
Okay. So let's say if, because I do have a lot of clients and followers that have one employee or two employees. They have maybe a driver here, like for example, some of the realtors, they have a driver and then they have an assistant. Usually they have a part-time assistant, 25 to 30 hours. But if it's only 1, 2, or 3, you don't need to have California sick leave.
No, you do not have to. It really has to do with the number part of it.
25, and like you said, there's exceptions to the rule. It could be 13, and like if you have 2 corporations. Okay, so that's that one. And then, do I need to use payroll services if I only have 1099 individuals?
Not necessarily. When you have just specifically 1099 employees, then the thing that happens is you're basically paying them cash. But if you have one employee, or if you're in the process of getting workers' comp coverage, you really want to separate your records so that when you do go through that audit at the end of the year and you don't get overcharged, you don't want to turn over your checkbook. And some things that happen with construction companies as they're paying out of their checkbook, they ask for the checkbook and the information, and it ends up happening that, guess what? They're going to have 1,000 questions on every check you wrote.
Oh my
So you
God.
really want to separate. That's where people get a little frustrated with the workers' comp audit, is that they do an audit and they are looking for money to charge you, or looking for things and reasons to charge you, and then you have to explain it, and that's where it gets complicated. And there are specific amounts associated with what is allowed. So rather than give them the book, you give them the payroll book.
Yeah.
And it creates less hassle, and you know exactly what you're being charged for, and they're not actually, diving into every aspect and bugging you, and then finding out, guess what? You have to now disprove what they think you owe.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, because everything's clear on your reports already that you have with payroll.
And a lot of people have a conception of what 1099 contractual services are. There is very specific laws for 1099, and there's a list, and you can find it on my Facebook account of SimpleTime, and you can always ask me a question of whether it's 1099 or not.
Mm-hmm.
It really has to do with how much and what type of work and who provides what to the relationship. If it's a person that always works for you and uses your equipment, the odds are it's really an employee. And what ends up happening no longer is the excuse, I unintentionally did it. I didn't know. You're still going to receive a penalty. So the best thing to do is always ask that question. If you want to send me a question, I'll definitely answer it for you, but you want to avoid.
So that's on your Facebook page, SimpleTime. That's the name of the Facebook page. We're going to put a link at the end of the show. We're going to add a link to the top of the video, so that way you guys can go to his page, and then we'll put his information as well. Definitely, it's totally worth it calling and finding out, because when I was getting ready to hire an assistant, I went through coaching, and they said, okay, well, you might want to get a class. So I joined a class on how to hire an assistant and what the rules were. And the first thing that they told us is, it is an employee, because she's going to be working for you on a schedule. She's going to be coming every day, or certain days, and she doesn't have her own business that she's just working for you. It's like you are hiring her. And I guess this lady that was doing the class, they went through that, and she said it was really expensive, and then they were doing audits like for the following years all the time, and it got really expensive. So sometimes it's easier for us to, I'll just pay you cash. I don't want to go through the process of paying payroll, because it's not just payroll, you're paying Social Security, you're paying taxes. So if you're paying someone $10 an hour, it's not really $10, but if you want to save that money, you might end up paying more with all the penalties.
The penalties it's not worth the penalties. The penalties can increase, and if they ever decide that they want to go back, when you talk about breaks, whether they had their meal breaks, whether they had their rest breaks, mm-hmm. whether you have records, whether you actually verify their employment, did you do everything you're supposed to do to be compliant?
Right.
They come back and they says you didn't do this, you didn't do that, and then there's the other aspect. If you were 1099 and you didn't pay for workers' comp, and guess who else is going to come in? The Department of Labor is going to come in and says, well,
yes.
Guess what?
Yes.
You owed this for penalties, etc. It's better to find out first if you have to have a payroll.
Yeah, if they qualify for 1099 or not.
Yes, that's the first thing to do. Do they qualify?
Yes, I agree with that, and it is a big penalty. We're not going to go into exact numbers, because obviously it depends. But I know that it was pretty big for them to have that class about it. It's definitely worth it. And you know what? It's better. The employee also needs to be doing their taxes. It benefits them that they're working their Social Security and paying for that, and getting unemployment if they get hurt or something happens and they have to stop working. It's a benefit that they will have. And if you're not doing things right, like I was telling you before, it's not when it happened to somebody I know that they had some people working for them, and they were giving them 1099s at the end of the year, and they're like, oh no, well, they're doing that on their own time, their own things. Well, it seemed like everything was going fine, but there was a problem, and they had an argument, and he went to unemployment, and then he ended up suing them. Even, when they're your friends, everything seems to be fine, but as soon as there's a problem and you were not following the law, they're going to go after you, and you just have to do things right. Is it expensive? The payroll?
Payroll not necessarily. Depends on the number of employees and the frequency.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's a processing and making sure the taxes go to the appropriate locations for the employee,
Mm-hmm.
for the employer, make sure that everything is done correctly in a timely manner. That way, you're not having problems later on down the road. It's really important about just taking care of it. Like you said, it really is about, if you love the relationship and it goes south, your problems are going to escalate really, really quickly. So covering that is first verifying if there's a 1099.
Yeah.
Second of all, if it's not, if it's questionable, it's in your best interest to make sure that you don't ever come into that problem. It's a cost to the business. It does get written off. Okay, you can use it to your advantage, but the most important thing is, can you afford being sued or being fined or going into litigation? You're talking so many different things coming at the same time for avoiding something that you think is making your life easier. It's going to get really complicated really quick. I don't mean to scare people about it, but there's been, one of my clients got, in Bonita, got a $51,000 fine. Back wages and penalties, and that was because of the way they chose not to pay an employee.
Yeah, exactly.
Correctly.
It's totally not worth it. It's definitely document. So now let me ask you, since we're going to that, what type of payroll records do I need to maintain?
All records should be kept. Federal government requires it to be, I believe it's 4 years. The state of California requires 6 years. The employee does have a right to see all the records.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, there's a little bit of how the expense associated with copying them for them.
Mm-hmm.
It's better to ask for advice on
What documents?
documents to keep and how to keep them.
Mm-hmm.
Especially when you definitely want to do one thing is make sure your I-9 documents are covered, that it's being reviewed, and they're separate from your employee files. At the end, you put everything together as the employee has been terminated, but keep those files. A lot of people think that payroll files just means the wages. It can include those punches of them clocking in and clocking out. Those records that they have should be something that the employee signs off on. Mainly because of what's happening lately with, if anybody's heard about, is going to be the rest periods in the state of California. It's a new law. You have to have records of the rest period for people that are hourly or non-exempt. Those are important to keep on record. And just as a heads up, the state is auditing businesses that you receive a complaint about, and they want to see those records. Why? Because someone's complaining they're not being treated right, and we all love California. It's got a beautiful view, but it's got the most
Lawsuits.
It's got a lot of lawsuits, and there's been
Yes.
so many of either misclassification or not permitting employees to take their break. Even though they might have, and you don't have a record, they're going to
Yeah.
side with the employee.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. That's why you always have to have everything in writing. I think that you can say to your employees something, but if it's not on paper, then sometimes they don't even have to sign that they accept what you're saying. It's just signing that you told them. It's not saying, oh, I accept. Even if they disagree, they're just signing that you went over that. Or like you were saying, the payroll timesheets, that I didn't know that they have to sign it.
They're not required to sign it, but it's kind of like covering yourself. If you're informing your employee, I'm paying you based on the following hours, and the employee agrees, even though the employee received his check, it's a safe thing to say, well, 3 months ago I worked overtime. Well, now you have to go back and double check and make sure that you have all your documentation.
And then you don't have it.
And if you don't have anything, you don't have no sign off,
We're like, okay, we don't have anything.
then you're like, okay, there's a problem. Okay, how are you going to resolve this problem? Because the employee believes that he worked it. And if you have no proof that the employee worked X, Y, and Z, then it's going to become an issue for you.
Yeah. Okay, so you mean have a timesheet. So if you guys have an employee, obviously we're not big companies. I mean, our company here is a huge company, Coldwell Banker, so they have like a sign in, sign out system. But let's say you're a realtor and you only have one assistant or another employee, and what he was saying is that you can have it has to be something that is not
It's not editable.
editable. So then they sign in, sign out, they put their break, sign in, and then they sign it themselves, not you. They sign it, and then you can keep that. You don't need to have any special tool or equipment. That would
If
work.
you don't need to, as long as it's something you're going to create and they're going to sign off at it, it just covers you. Making sure that they said, I agreed to this, and then at the other side of it, when they get their check, just because they cash their check doesn't mean they agreed.
They accept it, yeah.
They accepted. They just cashed their check. That's just, I accepted the money, but I don't necessarily accept the hours that I was paid for.
What if you have them do their own payroll?
Yeah.
I
I
told
was
Claudia.
gonna ask that.
Because
Like,
Claudia,
turn it in.
I'm sure that a lot of people have the same issue that I have. It is a problem sometimes because I have a very nice assistant that loves her work, and I have to push her to leave the office. Like, I have to, like, leave the desk for 30 minutes. You need to go and grab something. She's like, oh, yeah, I'm going. But you know what? Sometimes if I'm not here, yeah, like, she's there and she could be on the phone or doing something else. But, you know, as employers, we get scared because, like you're saying, you know, you're happy now and she wants to stay, but then it's illegal that she stays and works through her break because she wants to and I'm not here to see. So those are little things that even the employees have to consider. Like, okay, well, I know I don't want to leave, but it's my break, so I have to sign out and take my break. So it goes both ways. So I think when we're having issues like that, I think it's a good idea, like he's saying, have your timesheet, have them sign. So then that way, you know, they're signed out. If they want to stay in their office and do something personal after work, but at least they already signed out, right?
Correct.
So, because I feel bad kicking her out.
Well, you're doing it for her good, and you're doing
Yeah.
it for yourself.
Mhm.
You want an employee that is actually, you know, happy to be at work and needs to go home and rest.
Right.
And when the work is done, the work is done.
Mhm.
But the bottom line is, as that becomes a larger group, people get into complex, you know, like time and attendance, more complicated ways of recording this information, which can help a business with cost analysis and making good business decision. But the most important thing is it changes the relationship, and the employee thinks that they're not trusted, and the employer needs to cover themselves to make sure they're not breaking any rules.
Right. Yeah,
And-
that's another thing. Like, you want to make sure that they don't think that, okay, I want you to sign in because I don't want you to lie. It's which I was, like, afraid at the beginning with, because Claudia was my first assistant as a realtor. And before I used to have assistants, I was a training manager, but I was worked for a corporation, so they handle all that. I didn't have to do anything. So when I hired her, it was a little weird. Like, I want you to sign in, I want you to sign out, I want you to leave at this time. And it, like you said, it creates that kind of like, why is she not trusting me, or why is she saying all these things? But like he said, you have to have it on paper, you need to keep your records, there's audits, and then now there's that law that's changing for the breaks.
The rest, as of this year, the rest breaks have to be recorded, and especially for people that are non-exempt. There's going to be audits coming.
What do you mean non-exempt?
So, example, employees that are paid on an hourly basis,
Uh-huh.
okay, they need to, the ones that are paid by an hourly wages, you should know exactly when they took their breaks.
Okay.
Okay, it should be before the 4th hour, okay, and the most important thing to it is that you're as an employer are allowing them to take a rest,
Mhm.
you're allowing them to go to their lunch. It's really about, you know, labor is a cost to the business. And if an employee is working more than what they should be, and because it's in the benefit of the business, then they should be compensated for that.
Right.
Employer must make sure that they are allowing the person to rest, to be away from their work completely. It doesn't always happen, okay? There's ways to compensate the employee, and I'll give a tidbit. If an employee, you know, if an employee actually goes through their lunch where they're unrelieved of their work,
Yeah.
let's say it's 30 minutes, well, you owe them about an hour of extra time. Not overtime, but it's a penalty to make because they did not go through their meal.
Right.
If they ate at their desk, that's not considered
Yeah.
a
break.
A break.
Right.
You know, the meal break, it's not considered the break.
Because they're still there in the computer.
They
peeking and
they can be on the
answering
computer,
emails,
they're
so-
answering a phone call, they can be, you know, filling out paperwork. And that's where it gets a little complicated, and it, you know, at some point in time, your business is going to grow. And employees need to understand what they're supposed to do, what they're not supposed to do, and if they continue the practice, then you have one issue. But then all of a sudden, you get another employee, and one says, we do it this way. And now you
Then
have
you
two
have
people that are
two
doing it the wrong
issues.
way.
That's true, yes. Claudia's making faces here because
I know.
she's the
I
one.
just put the monkey like the quiet mouth.
But you know what? I'm going to have this video on record. If I get an ad, I'm going to take it.
I can be a witness, don't worry.
So, okay, so then let's go to the next question. Do I need to have an employee handbook?
My suggestion to a lot of the misunderstandings, aka, for example, taking lunch, taking breaks, how do I request time off? What is the relationship built on? And it could be a relationship of just one employee or one employer, but it's interesting to say that a lot is heard and a lot is not heard when you hire somebody. My little joke about the chances or the percentage of chances you're going to get a great employee is about 12.5%.
Wow.
The odds are against you that you'll look through all your resumes, and you got a 50-50 chance of finding good resumes.
Mm-hmm.
You'll interview, and some people make great interviews. And so you got another 25% that you selected the right person.
Right.
And then you have 90 days or they have 90 days. Guess what? You got a 50-50 chance that that person that you started off with is actually the person you're really looking for.
Right.
So when you have a handbook, I would say you don't need it, but it will help you or may save you or your business if you're on the same page with your employees. Because if there's a doubt, and you hand them, these are the rules, this is the mission, this is the vision
Mm-hmm.
of the business, it gets to the point that they're on the same page. So taking time off, what am I allowed to put on Facebook? Can I be on my phone while I'm working? Can I make comments about my company outside of work?
Mm-hmm.
There's literally, employee handbooks can be as much as 25 to 38 pages long,
Yeah.
covering everything that's required to be covered.
Yeah.
From
And I believe that it's setting them up for success, because sometimes if you're working for someone, if you have an employee and you don't have a handbook for them, or a job description, or a to-do list, or you don't have that, I mean, I don't think that you give them a chance to feel successful, because at least if they have that, they know, well, I'm doing pretty good, because you know what, I'm actually doing everything that it says here. But they can actually be doing all that, but since you don't have it on a paper, and then you tell them something that they're not doing, then they don't feel successful. They're just gonna remember like, oh my God, I'm always getting in trouble. But if they had that handbook and say, well, actually no, because I do all these things. Maybe I'm doing one thing that I'm not doing that good on, but I can work on that. So I think by having that handbook, it helps you, make it easier for you to train them, but also for them.
It does, because when you think about it, a lot of practices come from other companies, ones that you probably don't want to happen. Exactly, let's take lunch breaks, meals, how things are actually processed. If you have it in the employee handbook, the employee has been informed exactly what is expected of them.
Mm-hmm.
And if they have doubts, because you can't explain your company in the first 3 days,
Right.
it's going to take you 90 days some days for
Right.
them to fully understand. So the handbook is the first kind of stepping stone for them, is to understand the company. The second one is most importantly, is going to be the job description.
Mm-hmm.
Is it that important? Bullet
Points.
bullet points are really, really good for a job description, and then you can ask questions as you go along, because you actually are taking them through the whole process of performance, expectations,
Yeah.
how things are going to be managed, who reports to who. It really gives them a clear picture. So now they become, rather than somebody trying to figure out what the business is about, they're focused on what your business is, which is what you want. Even though it might be an experienced person, they still have expectations of what they thought they heard.
Yeah, exactly. And then they have the same vision as you, because you guys are going for the same end result. And if you make changes, one of my advice for you would be, put it on paper. Like, there's things that me having a new assistant last year, there were many changes to that to-do list and to that job description. So every time I changed something, because maybe it wasn't that clear at the beginning, because I wasn't that clear either. So we had a meeting and we say, okay, well, this is not working out this way. Now it's going to be this way. Let's put it on paper and let's have you sign it. And then we keep it on record. So by us reading it together, signing it, we remember. Anything you put on paper, you remember. And it's always better to have records, because when you're doing a review, you're like, oh my God, you're doing awesome. We did all these things before, and we never repeated this. Like, you got it the first time. So I think it goes both ways. It helps us as employers, and then also the employee. Right? Okay, so the employee handbook. So when and what do I need to pay an employee if they are separated from the employment, and what if they resign?
When an employee gets terminated, which means a decision is made by the owners or the business itself that says, I no longer want this relationship for whatever reason.
You're fired. Right?
Okay, we're not on The Apprentice. But, it means that the relationship has ended. Everything that's due to that employee is due at that moment when you bring them in. One thing that I've heard from a lot of people is they don't want to pay a show-up time to bring the employee in to terminate them.
Yeah,
They don't
you
want to. Can I call them on the phone and terminate it? You could, But guess what? You'll probably get sued for wrongful termination. And you say, well, what if they don't want to come in? It gets a little complicated when you're terminating somebody, but you do have to pay them everything that they're owed.
Yeah.
Can you charge them for stuff that they have? No. And that's one clear thing, is like if they have, it gets a little complicated if they have a piece of the equipment. That equipment is technically part of the operation of the business. It gets a little bit of what you can deduct from an employee's wages. Wages in the state of California is the most guarded piece of right that an employee has, regardless of what they've done.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and it gets a little complicated when they've done wrong. And that's the key thing, is you really would want to either consult with the HR side of payroll, or an actual attorney that actually deals with those specific rules. You want to be informed, and sometimes it just is like a quick question. Search it out before you make that decision. My suggestion is, if you just want the relationship to end, California is an at-will state. A lot of people don't understand what that means. At-will means that we're in a mutual relationship. If you want to leave, you can leave. If I choose to let you go for no reason, I can. It doesn't sound right, but California means that there's a relationship and anybody can walk away from it. So that's just a person being terminated. If somebody resigns, you have 72 hours to give them their final check.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. My suggestion to everybody is, if you're going to give somebody that's been on direct deposit for a while, you should. It's in your best interest to give them a live check, because now you have a document. Person can say they never got the money, and you now have to prove it. Because you wired it. So if
It takes
somebody,
a while to prove.
it takes a while to prove it, to make sure that it was in their account. So the safest bet, if somebody is being terminated or resigned, you basically want to make sure you give them a live check.
Okay. So
Or
that
mail it to 'em.
resign, so you have 72 hours to give them their check.
To give them
If
their
they
check.
resign. But if you're gonna terminate them or end the relationship, like he said, that sounds like a boyfriend-girlfriend thing.
Yeah, it does.
I kind of like that.
Right?
And-
So
and-
if you're gonna end the relationship, then you have to make sure you have the check there. You cannot fire them today and pay them tomorrow. So
I'll send it to you.
yeah, so if you're thinking of, ending a relationship with one of your employees, make sure that you have the check ready before you talk to them,
I just thought of
including the hours when you're sitting and talking to them, right?
So I just thought of another idea that may help some people. If somebody gives 2 weeks notice, they have ended the relationship and given a courtesy of 2 weeks.
Right.
The relationship because they've taken the first step of giving a 2 weeks notice.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to pay them for the 2 weeks.
You can let them go before.
You can let them go. So all of a sudden you covered everything that you need to, and says, you know what? There's nothing more for you to do. I know you want to move on, and allow them to move on. Give them their check. They resign. So they say, this will be your last day. I'll give you your check on X day.
Yeah.
Whenever you talk about those extra 2 hours for showing up when you terminate somebody, if you did minimum wage and you're talking about $20 to have somebody leave and not have a worry about it, even though you're going to talk to them for 15 minutes and let them go,
Just pay the 2 hours.
I'm sorry, $20 to not have a problem is not a lot to have a lot investigated about.
Yeah, totally worth it. If you ever give your 2 week notice, no 2 weeks. You have to give me a month and train your replacement.
Give me a year.
I'll think about it.
Hey, I have a friend. She gave a month notice and she trained her replacement. She's
very
like
nice.
that's how loyal she was. Okay, not for me, which was working for somebody else. Okay, let's go to the next one. Do I need to keep records of rest and meal breaks? Also, we went over that. Are there any penalties if I don't? So yeah, you have to keep records of the meals and the breaks that they get. You can do it. Create your own timesheet. Make sure they sign in, sign out for the breaks, and that they sign it daily. So that would stand in court, right?
Correct. The error rate, according to the American Payroll Association, most businesses have a 1 to 8% error rate in processing time. So if we're talking a couple of employees, so it's always good to have some type of time and attendance that'll help you. Because if you just actually are just doing it manually and you make a change and you make a change wrong, that's an error. That error costs us X amount of dollars. And then on top of it, one of the things that I always get answered is, well, it doesn't cost me anything to process payroll, and somebody's doing the work. When you factor in that person's time to actually try to figure things out, some normal, it takes about maybe 10 to 20 minutes per employee. So if you have X amount of employees, that's a lot of time you're spending on processing payroll.
Yeah.
Well, they could be doing something else. And including the owner, they say it doesn't cost anything. I think the owner makes more money than a clerical person, so they are worth more. So if they're doing the work, they're
Yeah.
actually spending or wasting money that they could just have somebody do it for less amount of money.
And it's not just adding up the hours, it's sending the checks to unemployment, Social Security, like doing all that other stuff.
All the clerical
It's-
part of it's complicated.
Yes, it's way better to have a company do it for you. The fee is minimal, what they charge per pay period, and they handle everything. They send all the checks out, and it all comes out of your account. You get your reports, and at the end of the year, you just give that to your CPA for your taxes. And
Your quarterly statements. The one thing I'd like to go back is to the sick leave, and I may have not mentioned it.
Uh-huh.
It's required that those balances be on the employee's checkbook. So if for those people that use QuickBooks and may or may not have on the employee's check how much sick leave they have used or how much they're currently in their balance, you know what? It can become a problem when the employee wants to use those.
and then it's not there.
And
So-
it's not there to see, and they may file a complaint.
But when
You
they're
don't-
through a payroll company, you guys have that on the
It's all
check,
taken
on the
care of
pay
for
stub.
them.
Yeah, it's all done, definitely. That's really good. So how long does it take, that's not a question here, but how long, let's say I'm gonna hire, I'm paying cash for someone, I just decided, you know what, I'm just gonna do things right today, and I call you, how long does it take to set everything up, and how much upfront money do I have to pay?
There's normally for an implementation, which everybody says, what does that mean? It means we have to make sure we have all the records together, which includes state and federal tax IDs, making sure that we're able to move monies from one account to another account for the employer and the employee. We have done it overnight, from one day to the other.
That's
Don't,
pretty quick.
yeah, but as long as we have everything that we need to do,
Right.
we prefer to have more time. When a business is switching from a payroll service to another payroll service, we have to mirror all the data, and it's not as easy as people think. But basically, ensuring that everything is exactly to the penny of reporting. When you switch from one payroll company to another,
Uh-huh.
there's the person who's the second payroll company or resource. They have to generate the W-2. And it has to be exact to everything in compliance. So the employer and the employee have something to process or to give to their employees. It could be implementation fee is probably about $150.
Okay, set everything up. Mhm.
The actual just to make sure all the records are in place. Everything from the employees' information as far as calculating for them, any deductions, any direct deposits. There's a lot of things that employees have withdrawn, even from benefits, medical, dental, vision. All those
Yeah.
things are being processed correctly. The difference between my company and other companies is that we don't draw funds unless they're direct deposit. Some actually take the money and give you back a check, their check. We don't. We actually just generate the check under the client's account, so it's actually from them.
Okay.
So it doesn't sit in our account. We only transfer taxes, we only transfer direct deposits, and then we charge for the fee.
Okay.
And people always say, well, what is the fee? And the fee is dependent on the number of employees and what the frequency. So it'll be different from a person that pays once a month, every 2 weeks, every 15 days, because it's really those transactions going to the federal and state to pay for what's appropriate.
Okay. So and also how many employees you have, I can imagine, right? That it depends.
It depends mainly on the number of employees, because it's a lot of transactions. You got to think about it as you're wiring from a bank account to the federal and the state. So that information, it's not going, a three-way, to us and over to the bank. It's going straight from bank to the account. And so we want to make sure that it gets there, make sure it's verified. All this information is what the accountants and the bookkeepers really want to have. It has to be accurate, and then at the end of the year, it has to be able to be processed to get those W-2s and or the 1099s. You have to remember that you can run a 1099 employee through your payroll for your records. And that's really, really helpful.
Right, to have that as well, yeah, in case there's an audit. Okay, so I'm gonna go back to talking about like people that get paid cash. Something obviously that it's not recommended. It's like if you have an assistant and you have an employee paying them cash, and they're not supposed to be 1099. Just remember, it's even if you're the person receiving the cash and you're thinking, well, they're doing me a favor because you know what, I get my cash directly and I'm not paying any taxes, but by not reporting those taxes, you're also losing out on your Social Security benefits, you know, in the long run, on your unemployment benefits, because you're not, when they take money from your check to pay unemployment and pay Social Security, they're also taking that money from your employer as well. Your employer is paying part of it, you're not paying all of it. So you are losing some benefits by letting your employer pay you cash. So just remember that. And if you want to buy a house, if you want to buy a car, they're going to ask you for your tax returns. And usually people that are getting cash are not reporting it.
No.
That's the reason they want to get cash. So just it might seem like it's a good deal, but trust me, in the long run, it's not such a good deal. So make sure you do things right. If you're an employer, if you're an employee, just do things right because it'll benefit you in the long run, right?
Yeah. It seems like government is taking a lot of money away, and a lot of people don't like that. They would rather have more cash in their pocket. But the bottom line is when you need it for something, sometimes you don't foresee it. And California's gone through a couple problems in the last couple of years. There's a lot of people that, where do they turn to? There's
Unemployment.
Unemployment is not there because there's nothing reported. And then you have your Social Security down the road. It's like, is it going to be there? Well, the accounts are there. You know, they're being paid into. The question is going to be, what will happen in a couple of years? And there's immediate needs, and there is, am I covered? And that's the most important thing, to am I covered? Now that can be said from the employer's point of view, am I covered, did I do everything right? To the employee, it says, what do I do now? I'm out of money.
Right, exactly. So keep all those things in mind. It's definitely worth it being doing payroll the correct way. So we are gonna see, do we have any questions, Claudia?
Yes, we do.
Oh, okay, let's go ahead with the questions.
Let's see.
Ay, se me cae.
Is there any apps that can track working hours for employees, companies less than 25?
An app, we do have our own time and attendance. It is an app. It is a physical time clock, or it can be a desktop. I always recommend that businesses that have decided to use like a desktop is have it IP restricted. So it's one of the things we do, and it's based. We don't charge rental fee for.
IP restricted, yeah. Like,
And people say, what does that mean? This means that the employee
they need
can't.
to be there to
The
be able
employee
to
can't
click
be
it.
down by the beach on their computer using their cell phone and saying that they're working from there. Our apps is tailor-made, or our software is made tailor-made to each business. And the most important thing to it is we only charge transaction fees, which is how many employees in the month actually use the app or the time clock or the physical desktop.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't charge for the time clock itself. So if you have one in the office and we install it, we're not going to charge you rental fees.
Okay, but if they're not doing payroll and they need it for something else, can they buy that app from you?
Yes, they can.
Okay, so yeah, make sure you contact him for that. What's the next question?
We have, at what point on company size you recommend to have a company handbook?
It really is how close of a relationship you have. When you get past 2, or you get to 2 employees, it is a good thing to have a handbook, because you're going to have people that, depending on when they came into the relationship with the owner, it's good to have maybe a very simple handbook, because it gives the rules. It gives the rules of how the relationship is going to work.
Okay.
Is it required to provide the payroll company records of their rest periods?
No.
Those are just for an audit, right?
I mean, when you say to report them to payroll, no. If you have a time and attendance, they're going to see them. Like when my clients, I can see them and help them with their time and attendance by looking at the records, because it's a portal generated between the two of us,
Mm-hmm.
and I can see their hours. But the bottom line, when you're reporting to your payroll company your hours, let's just say you don't have one, all you need to do is provide the hours.
Okay.
And then we have, do you need them to do you need to have them sign the agreement being paid on both exempt and non-exempt?
Non-exempt is not required for them to sign a contract because you've agreed upon a compensation. And regardless of, normally exempt individuals have the ability to modify their hours.
Yeah, they're on
You know, so
salary.
they're on salary, they fluctuate. They could be in early, out late, split their day. They're more defined as a production of specific goals. So those are not required for the exempt. Can you ask them to do it? Can you put an exempt person on a time clock? You can, as long as you don't interrupt their compensation. That is legal. People sometimes think they cannot or they should not be on a time clock. You can put a salary person on a time clock, and I want you to kind of think.
To make sure you're getting at least the 40 hours. Right?
Well, no. Here's an idea that people only think that a time clock is about punching in and punching out hours. You can figure out how much of a production they're doing in specific areas. A good example would be a company that I work with that has restoration. What they tend to do is they're finding out exactly how much each project is costing them in labor by the time clock. I program their clock every single pay period and modify it so those hours are being divided by the different work codes or the different projects that they're working at, so they know exactly what it's costing them.
Right.
And what did it cost them? No more. The employee is helping the business figure out what the costs are for each and every project, how much is downtime, how much is lunchtime.
Yeah, knowing where the hours are going.
Where are the hours going?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Okay, let's go. We already over our time. We have a few more questions. I saw Karen here. Do you need, oh no, that's the other one.
What is the rule for lunch? After 6 hours, is it required?
The best solution is before the 5th hour is to have that 30-minute meal. That 30-minute meal break.
So it's for 6 hours, so that means you have to take it before the 5th hour. Claudia Lomeli, remember?
So even 6 hours, I have to take a lunch break?
Yes.
Yes. You know that. I tell you every time.
There are exceptions out there. There's a couple classifications in California that allow those meal breaks to be voided, or it has to be a classification or to a relationship. And a good example would be somebody who's working a graveyard shift and there's nobody else around. What is the understanding? What is the agreement? It's more than just saying this is the rule or this is the law. And having somebody from the HR background is really important to ask.
Okay.
So as long as you put it on paper. If you are a business owner as an independent contractor and hire an assistant, how should you pay them to satisfy labor law? If you're a business owner as an independent contractor and hire an assistant, yeah, they have to be on payroll, right?
They have
They're
to be
an employee.
They're an employee. That you would have to get a federal tax ID and a state ID, even though you might be recording yourself as an individual. Having that state ID that you're going to be paying taxes, not for yourself, but you're going to be paying taxes for that employee. So you can become an employer of one employee.
Okay. Ricardo, one last question. And then if there's more questions, Ricardo will go back and answer them from his page. But the other one was, can they use sick leave for vacation time?
No.
No.
It's sick.
Sick leave is sick leave, and the sick leave from the state of California is expressly for specific processes that have to happen. Some of those the employer can define. For example, you have to use a minimum of 2 hours, or you have to. It's really complicated when it comes to how do I call in and ask for sick leave pay. If a person says I'm calling off sick, the question, the rule of thumb is, did they say pay me, or did they just say I'm out sick?
Yeah.
Well, you have to specify.
You have to specify. It doesn't fall into how before you used to call in 2 hours in advance.
Yeah.
I'm going to be out. Those rules are very complicated for California sick leave. So it's really good to actually get some help and find out if you have a handbook, if you have personal time off. You really need to know how your business entity has been and how it merges with the laws.
Right. Yeah, you have to make sure. Yeah, and then if they're sick, you have to give them the time. Claudia is usually asking to go to the beach. That's her time off.
And
I
another,
don't call in sick, but I will take vacation.
and that sick leave is not paid out when the employee leaves.
Right. Okay. All right. So let's see. We're gonna get 2 names from here, and today. So let's go over what we're giving out. we're giving out. We usually give the Starbucks gift card, but today we're giving out this gratitude. Do you have a gratitude journal? You do that?
No.
No? Okay.
I write on Facebook and do gratitude sometimes.
What is that? So these journals are for every morning you write the things that you're grateful for. And I did coaching with Tom Ferry, and it was 10 things. You have to be 10 things that you were grateful for, and then other 10 things that you wanted to achieve, or your goals, and write them in present tense. So to me, it worked for me, and you know what? It actually works when you're having a rough day or a rough week and you think everything's going wrong because you're only focusing on that one thing that is not working out. But when you get your journal in the morning, I mean, obviously it doesn't have to be a journal like this, it could be any paper, and you just write everything that went good already that morning. Like, you know what, I got up, I went out, my car doesn't have a flat tire, and you know what, I have enough gas to get to work, I don't have to stop at the gas station, and there's enough stuff in the fridge to make me a smoothie before I go. So many things could go right. My kids are fine, they're healthy, and you can do 10 very easily. But if you can start with 3 and then go to 5, I can honestly tell you that things are going to change for the better, because we attract things of the way we feel. So however we feel, those are the kind of things we attract. So if we are always complaining, talking about everything that's going wrong, you know what, we're going to attract that kind of people, because, misery likes company. So they're going to come to you because they want to complain too. And then everybody's complaining, and that's the vibe, that's the energy, that's the vibration. And that's what you're going to get. And when you start hanging out with people that are always very positive, and they're telling you how to do things right, and how you can do better, and you hang around with that kind of people, that's the vibe. So then your life just gets better. And if every morning you're being grateful for everything you have, you just get more. It's like, if you have your son, and then you give him something and he doesn't even say thank you, but then you have this other son that you give him something, and Dad, thank you so much, you know what, I'm really going to use it. You just feel good giving that kid stuff, like, oh my God, right?
Yeah.
And that's how life is. The more grateful you are, the more things you get. So anyways, I know this is not part of this show, but I had to throw it out there. So these are the journals. So pick one. Oh, let's do our music, our drum. Erika Gutierrez, yay, Erika. So we'll get you red, and then, so this will be for Erika, I put her name here. And then, you want to get another one?
Yeah, for mine.
Ta-da! Let's see, who's the next
Dun,
one?
dun, 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 dun.
It's the black one. It's like a
I
shark.
think this is fixed.
Isabel Villa, yay! Maybe you can make him write on it.
Oh, don't give her those ideas. Please don't give her those ideas.
Yes, Isabel, do it. She'll be like, I want to see your 5 things. Okay, so you're going to take this with you.
Yes.
Oh, thank you so much, everyone. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
I know we're going to be in touch now that I know you. We're going to be connecting and networking together. And we're going to leave them with a new listing that we have here in Otay Ranch. So if you know anybody that's looking for a big house, it's a 4-bedroom house. Oh, no, we're doing actually Carlsbad, right?
Yeah.
Oh.
So Carlsbad, it's here, it's Carlsbad Street, and it's here in San Diego, 92114, right off Lemon Grove, in between Lemon Grove and Encanto.
Okay.
And that one it's listed for $495, and we have beautiful pictures for you. Take a look, and we're gonna have an open house this weekend. So thank you for joining us, and we will see you next week. Thank you.
Thank you.